In October 1972, a 22-year-old excavator operator named Rachel Marinov scooped something glittering out of the ground near Varna, Bulgaria. He thought it was copper. He tossed it into a shoebox, the one that came with his new work boots, and shoved it under his bed. Weeks passed. That shoebox held 2.2 pounds of gold. Every piece of worked gold previously known from the entire Copper Age combined weighed less than 1 pound. When archaeologist Alexander Minchev walked into the room and saw it all laid out, he said their eyes popped. That's a direct quote. What Marinov had accidentally found was the Varna necropolis, 6,500 years old, predating the Egyptian pyramids by more than 1,000 years. 300 graves, 6 kilograms of gold across 3,000 artifacts. And the distribution of that gold tells you everything about who these people actually were. About 1 in 5 graves had small gold items. Most had almost nothing. A single bead, flint knife, maybe a bone bracelet. But 4 graves held roughly 3/4 of all the gold. That's the ancient world's version of 4 people owning the entire neighborhood. Grave 43 sat at the center of the cemetery. Inside, a tall man, somewhere between 40 and 60 years old, buried with 990 gold objects. He held a gold-wrapped axe like a scepter. He wore a solid gold penis sheath. Vladimir Slavchev, the site's curator, put it plainly, even the penises of these people were gold. Modern researchers think he may have been a master metalsmith, someone whose control over gold production gave him the same authority as a king. The gold itself was nearly pure, 23.5 to 24 carats. These weren't people learning to work metal. They had already mastered it. And then there were the seashells, Mediterranean spondylus shells found in the same elite graves as the gold, traded across enormous distances. To the people of Varna, those shells may have carried more practical weight than the gold did. Gold was sacred and symbolic. Shells moved economies. Everything you assume about what gold meant, the oldest worked gold on Earth flips it. The treasure wasn't the point. The power behind it was. Grave 36 had no body in it at all. Just a clay mask where the skull should have been, and 850 gold objects arranged around empty space. Someone powerful enough to fill a grave with gold never made it home. It's a memorial wreath made of a king's ransom. The Varna people had a weight system. 2 standardized units, one weighing roughly 1/5 of a gram, one roughly 2/5. They were measuring gold like currency. That's not primitive. That's the same logic as a modern mint, standardized, repeatable, controlled. These people weren't guessing at value. They were engineering it. The gold almost certainly came from the Srednagora Mountains in central Bulgaria. Someone organized the mining, the transport, and the smithing across hundreds of kilometers. Obsidian blades in the graves came from volcanic regions even farther away. Rock salt likely arrived from a mine called Provadia, the oldest known salt production site in Europe. Salt, at that scale, was industrial. Whoever controlled the salt supply controlled the food chain. Same as controlling the oil fields just 6,000 years earlier. Alexander Minchev put it bluntly, this cemetery was the first nail in the coffin of communist ideology. Radical inequality, buried in the ground, 6,000 years deep. The Bulgarian government sent the gold on world tours anyway. National prestige beat ideological consistency. The treasure that disproved equality became the state's greatest trophy. In Japan alone, the exhibition ran 7 months. 2 full television documentaries. The Japanese prince who visited called Varna the first European civilization. Full stop. Then, around 4000 BC, it all stopped. Every settlement along the lower Danube and the western Black Sea coast was abandoned within a generation. No burned villages. No mass graves. No weapons lodged in bones. Whatever ended the Varna culture, it wasn't a war. The people just left. Vladimir Slavchev's best guess, the fields turned to swamps. Climate shifted. Water rose, and the land that fed them stopped working, so they walked away. About 30% of the necropolis is still in the ground. Excavations restarted in 2021, targeting full completion by 2026. Nobody knows what's left down there. 6.5 millennia of silence, and a shoebox full of boot-scuffed gold cracked it open. Whatever those final graves hold, the ground isn't finished talking. Maria Gimbutas spent decades arguing that prehistoric Europe was peaceful, egalitarian, goddess-worshipping. The Varna graves dismantled that theory grave by grave. The richest burials were male. The chiefs were male. Slavchev was direct. The idea of a woman-dominated society is completely false. Gimbutas died in 1994, her theory already unraveling. She never fully reckoned with what Bulgaria had quietly dug up 20 years earlier. Sir Colin Renfrew put it plainly, nobody expected the oldest gold on Earth to surface in northeastern Bulgaria. Not Sumer, not Egypt. Bulgaria, the Varna Museum itself sits in a converted 19th century girls' school on Maria Luisa Boulevard. The building is older than the country that built it. Inside, roughly 11 of the 13 excavated pounds of gold are on display. The rest sits in Sofia. It's like splitting the Mona Lisa between two cities. One metallurgist described gold's appeal: simply break a gold axe and you melt it down, make another. Metal is never used up. That logic changed everything. That recyclability made gold worth hoarding and worth burying. You weren't wasting it. You were parking it somewhere the living couldn't touch it. A tiny gold bead recently found at Tel Unit site may actually predate Varna by a generation. The debate over who holds the oldest gold is still open. Both sites are in Bulgaria. The country is basically sitting on the world's oldest jewelry box, and most people couldn't find it on a map. The excavation halt in 1991 was deliberate. Archaeologists left the remaining 30% untouched, waiting for better tools and cleaner methodology. When digging resumed in 2021, the site was hemmed in by community garden plots and industrial buildings. The necropolis had a neighborhood growing over it. Every new grave opened now carries the weight of comparison. Does anything rival Grave 43? Nobody knows yet. That uncertainty is the whole point of going back. Slavchev said it plainly. 6,500 years ago, people had the same ideas we have today. Status, wealth, the need to be remembered. The gold was never the treasure. The gold was the receipt, proof that someone once had enough power to make the whole world notice them. The excavation in 1972 started with prison labor. Convicts from a local facility were bussed in to help dig. That detail never makes the museum plaques. Ivan Ivanov ran the dig for nearly 2 decades straight. He published almost nothing during those years. He was too busy pulling the ground apart to write about it. The weight of gold in Grave 43 alone, 1.5 kilograms, exceeded everything found at comparable sites worldwide across an entire 1,000-year window. Slavchev put it in writing: the Varna Cemetery's gold exceeds, by several times, the combined weight of every gold artifact found globally from the same millennium. Every site, every country. But this ancient gold sparked a legacy. It wasn't just a burial good, it became a blueprint for future kings, a dazzling testament to power that echoed for millennia. That distinction matters. A crown doesn't buy bread. It tells everyone in the room who decides who eats. The gold at Varna was doing exactly that kind of work. Yevor Boyadjiev, who directed the Tel Unit site dig, said flatly about his tiny gold bead, "It is a really important discovery, big enough to find its place in history." 2 Bulgarian sites, 2 claims. The oldest gold on Earth never left the same country. It just moved about 200 kilometers inland. The 16-inch flint blade found beside the man in Grave 43 is longer than most modern kitchen knives. It was never used, still sharp when excavated. Minchev recalled that when they first found more graves beyond the original fence, the fence wasn't big enough. Nobody had imagined the cemetery could be that large. 3 of the symbolic graves held unbaked clay masks, raw, unfired, fragile. They would have dissolved in rain. Someone buried them knowing they'd be gone within a season. That impermanence was probably the point. The ritual mattered. The object was just the vehicle. Same logic as burning a wedding dress. The act outlasts the thing. The current monetary value of the gold, by raw weight, is around $180,000. A decent house in a mid-sized American city. Not a king's ransom by modern math. The ransom was never in the metal. It was in what the metal said about the person who could command it, shape it, and take it underground forever. If this story changed how you think about gold, or about what we've always assumed is valuable, share it. The ground kept this secret for 6 millennia. It deserves an audience.